What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George, and today we are taking a look at a preview review of the game Kabula by Stranger Games Studios, which is going to be on Kickstarter October 19th, which might be today, or it might be a few weeks from now, or it might have been October 19th, 2021, and you're looking at this as the only surviving video that you found on Earth after we've all left and have started living on Mars. If so, thanks for ruining our planet. And speaking of ruining planets, welcome to the island. An island where there is perfect harmony. Anytime something dies, the magic Kabula tree in a sanctuary in the middle of the island will bring it back to life. All is calm. All is right. Silent night. So, of course, as horrible human beings from Earth, you decide to steal this Kabula tree, dooming the world to an eternity of death and despair. Aren't we humans the greatest? This is a game about irreverent humor, hybrid monsters, and hacking off bits of them to use as your own actions, sewing them to your body like some horrible Frankenstein abomination. But it's fine. The Kabula tree will make it all better, right? Right? Let's take a look. In Kabula, you take on the role of one of 4 depraved humans who have been transported to this magical island, which houses the sacred Kabula tree. But not only have you been transported here, all of your earthen technology and plastic have also come with you, and have transformed the island and the animals into weirder versions of what they already were. Take on the role of Zach the nerd who just wants to get laid, Jessica the undecided vegan, Clayton, the politician, or Isolde, the single mother, with an unlimited supply of babies to throw into the dungeons ahead of her, so she doesn't take any damage from the dangers that are sure to follow. As you can see, if these initial descriptors haven't already told you what type of game this is, it is certainly an acquired taste. More on that later. On your turn, you're going to run around the island, basically doing whatever you want, which tracks with the theme. You can visit various dungeons on the board, trying to survive a random event and getting some good items in the process. You can have a random encounter, which you'll always pretty much get something useful. Or discover a monster on the board that will immediately attack you for invading its land, all the while using the nefarious influence of social media to gain more popularity on the island, finally defining your personality once and for all, and making you respected enough to enter the sanctuary where the Kabula tree lies and steal the heck out of it. Now, if you steal the Kabula and killed the guardian that protects it on the island, you win. And everyone else loses. And I do mean literally everyone, because you've stolen the tree that provides everlasting life like some uneducated supervillain and have doomed everything on the island to a permanent death. So good job! You won! Now, the basic mechanic of this game has to do with the character's action tokens, aka the specific body parts / the proficiency with said body parts that your character starts with, which varies depending on the character. You can see Jessica starts with this amount, as I will show you in the B-roll. Yeah, that one. At any time you use an item, you'll be forced to use some of the body action tokens related to that item, moving them from the fresh to the used column. This can be for defensive items like shields or attacking items like pretty much everything else. But that's not all. Whenever you get damaged or something bad happens to you, naturally being the angry hunk of earth garbage that you are, you get to harness that rage, moving one token one space to the left, either from the used to the fresh category or the fresh to the rage category, because some items require you to be filled with rage to use them. Use those raging brains, or those raging butts. Now, on your turn, you get to take as many gray actions as you would like, as long as you have the tokens to do so. But as soon as you take an orange action or a red one, you'll see that this is just a prototype, so some of the colors aren't completely consistent between the player board and the tokens, but that doesn't matter. They're orange, they're red, you get the picture. When you take one of these orange actions, your turn ends and it moves on to the next player in round order. And this might seem like you're going to get to do a lot on your turn, but mostly the gray actions will boil down to movement-related abilities and discovering a monster. And everything else, like exploring dungeons, encounters, or attacking those monsters that you just discovered, will usually result in your turn being over. As will resting, which is how you move all your tokens, both used and raging, back to the fresh category. So when you find an item that lets you take those extra gray actions, that is a huge deal. And this reminds me a bit of the Vagabond from Root, if you're familiar. But I wish as you acquired more actions, see, whenever you spawn a monster, they spawn with a certain set of action tokens that serve as their health, and when you deal damage to them, you get to claim those tokens as your own, adding to your existing pool of action tokens. I wish these additional action tokens translated into being able to do more on your turn, because it doesn't often feel that way. Unless you get a bunch of legs and you can run as fast as you can all around the island. But most of the things that you're going to want to do on your turn will be explore and trigger events to try to get new items, which will end your turn, and then use those items to attack monsters or other players, which will also end your turn. So you never really get that feeling of building an engine where you get to do more and more. That's not this game. You just have to rest less, which is pretty significant still. This game, at its heart, is an RPG, where you try to level up your character and find a bunch of items, and then use those items to murder the Guardian and everyone else around the table who will inevitably turn on you once you've stolen the Kabula. Because, like football, whoever's holding the Kabula at the end of the game wins. That's how it works, right? And it really only makes sense to attack each other once the Kabula is stolen, because up until that point, you can take as much damage as you want, die as much as you want, with really no adverse effects. And here's the first part where you may really enjoy or really dislike this game. Because of this resurrection mechanic, you can kind of look at it as if nothing really matters. I quickly learned that healing doesn't matter at all until the Kabula is stolen, because instead I could just throw myself into a dungeon that I knew would spank me to death. Quite literally, I found an old granny in a dungeon who beat me to death with her slipper because I was such a little bad boy, which was a fitting end for my first life. And I would revive in the middle of the board, all negative status effects were gone, and ready to continue to be the gigantic a-hole on the island that the game sets you up to be. And so it can feel pointless, like there are no consequences to your actions, until there are. And I actually really enjoyed this element of the game. The dungeon diving for rare treasures almost becomes a push your luck sort of deal. Because if someone steals the Kabula right before you were about to kill yourself for the second or third time, well, now death becomes permanent and you've got to run your little legs back to town or somewhere and figure out how to heal yourself and hope that the thief doesn't murder the herald and win the game in the meantime. So it feels almost like a race. But because of the randomness of the encounters, which make up a primary portion of the game, it's not necessarily a race that you have complete control over. This is another test as to whether or not the game is right for you. Because the encounters are, well, in keeping with the unbelievable stupidity of the world, their words, and in keeping with the spirit that nothing really matters, all of the encounters are really just jokes. They poke fun at the world. They're a perverse twist on what your standard RPG encounter might be, twisted into the world of the Kabula. I'll give you a couple examples. There was one encounter that was quoted in the first edition of the rulebook, which I didn't end up drawing in any of my playthroughs. I don't know if it's in the encounter deck or not, but it made me want to play this game. And it was something along the lines of, a man runs out of the wood screaming on fire. And you have two options. One, to be #generous and put out the fire. You'd get a random item from the guy, and you would get a hashtag token on your generous personality trait. This is how you level your personality up. If you get 3 hashtags on the same personality trait, you officially become that personality. You flip it over, get access to its special ability on the back, and have the ability to now go steal the Kabula. Or you could be #creepy and let him die, because the Kabula is just going to bring him back to life anyway. Eat his charred, delicious barbecued flesh and heal yourself 6 points. And that Well, it spoke to me. Another great encounter that I remember and gave me a surprising belly laugh when I stumbled upon it was something along the lines of, you come to a fork in the road, you can go left to the forest of misery or go right to the dungeon of despair. So, not being an idiot, you turn around and you go home to the pub. And then you had two choices there to decide what you get. And all of the encounters and the dungeons are in this style. And I gotta say, about 50% of the time, it would result in me and most members of the group having like one of those surprising belly laughs. These are funny and they're satisfying. If you're fine with the game poking fun at the genre and basically winking at you the whole time saying, hey, remember this game you're playing? Yeah, none of it really matters. And also, if you like that type of humor, which is a little perverse and can sometimes be a little off color. I mean, personally, I'm fine with it. I liked most of the encounters. Some of the ones that had to do with bodily functions, and there were a few of them I wasn't so keen on. It didn't make me laugh. It didn't tickle me in the way the others did. And the description of Isolde as a single parent who was abandoned by her partner after just another unwanted kid. I mean, that just kind of made me sad, and I didn't see anything funny there. But on the flip side, her being able to sacrifice her unending horde of children to reduce her damage is very dark, but quite funny. Especially as a mechanic. It's right on the line for me, but it makes for a great thematic tie-in. But because of these encounters, and because humor is such a large part of the game, if you get a group who's willing to be silly, and I can't believe I'm saying this, sit down and enjoy reading some funny cards together, this can be a great time. If you're not a fan of this sort of humor, or if having a bunch of encounters where the turn inevitably becomes, go to an encounter, choose one of the two options, get some stuff. If that turns you off, well then this is one that you should maybe pass on. Because it's such a huge part of the experience. And also, when you don't take the time to read the encounter out loud and have everyone kind of participate in the vibe, it really doesn't feel like you've done a lot on your turn. And this is highlighted when there's a bunch of roaming wild monsters around who you have to consistently go down the row and automate and upkeep their abilities. It sometimes feels like they get to do more fun stuff than you did. Now, I have had both positive and negative experiences of this game. And I'm glad I have, because it highlighted when everybody is not having fun around the table, it really shows in the game and the experience. The other mechanics aren't necessarily enough to make up for that lack of enjoyment if you're really not meshing with the style. I wish there was a little bit more to do on the board. The map feels a little empty. I wish different spaces would allow you to use your tokens in different ways. Maybe more gray actions. Maybe have a cave of flatulence where you can spend your butt tokens for $1 each. More gray actions on different map spaces, because there are a lot of named locations, and that's great, but unless you draw the specific event that's telling you to go there, the map doesn't play that large a part, or those locations don't play that large a part. Now, this will be on Kickstarter, so the more funding it gets, the more content they will be able to add. That's just the nature of this sort of beast. And I've spoken with the designer, and I know that they have a lot of content that they're hoping to add. More heroes, more heralds, more encounter cards. I personally hope that they prioritize adding in more encounter cards, because I have the prototype, so I got 30 encounters, and there's supposed to be 40 in the base game, and I'm sure there will be more added as the campaign goes on. But I don't know if 40 is enough. In a perfect world, I'd want it to be doubled, because when I hit my third play of this, I was already starting to redraw some of the same encounter cards, reliving the cards that I've seen, and I'm sure playing it in such proximity with itself, I played this in a row quite a few days, just so I'd be able to get enough plays in before I have to send it on to the next reviewer. And so the proximity of those plays didn't help dull my memory of what the encounters were. But once you know the joke, the cards aren't necessarily as satisfying the second time. And this is always going to be the case with games like this. This was one of my concerns about The Witcher Old World, which gameplay-wise, this actually reminds me a lot of. It feels like what I expected that one would feel like, and that one raised $14 million, so. Because there's definitely a lot to like about this game. I particularly love the art style. It feels like this weird mishmash between cartoon and reality. realism and weirdness. I think it's all really funny and well done, but like anything, it's going to be polarizing. I also know with the Kickstarter version, there's going to be a standee version and a miniature version, which I think is fantastic. It's always incredible to be able to offer that to people who don't have the money to get the miniature version. They can get the standee version for an increase in price. And just on that, I will say that the sculpt of the Herald that I have, the water dragon, looks really cool. And the monsters are so unique that it might be fun to have miniaturized versions of this. And I think the miniatures will turn out, if they're anything like the prototype, like the Herald of the water dragon, will turn out really neat. But obviously that's going to come at an additional cost. I also like teching up and getting funny items. And I really like the aiming system in combat, where you can sometimes only defend if the attack targets a specific body part, because you're wearing boots, so if it targets your legs, you get an additional defense on that. I think that's really, really neat. I like that it goes both ways. Monsters have different responses depending on where you hit them, and depending on the monster. I also didn't touch upon that when you kill a monster, they revive and they become your familio. So you can activate them to attack other people and monsters on your turn, using their own smaller pool of action tokens that you get to divvy up between you and your familio. It's fun to have, and it's fun to have a little sidekick that gets to run around and do basic actions and chip off damage from people or heal you up. And all the monsters feel different and neat, and I always found myself wanting to get a familio and was angry when I wasn't able to. And it gives you that sense of feeling stronger, which the sense of becoming stronger I think is very important in these types of games. So ultimately, Kabula was quite a positive experience for me, but I can definitely see it not being a positive experience for some, because there were certainly people in my game group who thought, I am not enjoying this, and it really kind of dampened the enthusiasm of the room. If you get someone around the table who just wants to tank the game, steal the Kabula before anyone's teched up or found any decent items or even recruited any familios, while there are still hordes of wild monsters on the board, and they just hope that the wild monsters will kill the Herald while they can just run away, well, honestly, that's a viable strategy, but it's not necessarily the most enjoyable strategy for everyone around the table, especially when players get knocked out and you're left with just one person playing by themselves. There definitely is an order in which you should do things to make this game more fun. And because it is an open world, you can go do whatever you want. Sometimes those things don't happen. And so the epic moments, I guess, that you can receive in the game can fluctuate. And I guess to sum it up, the bottom line would be this. In the right hands, Kabula can be quite a fun journey, filled with unbelievable stupidity, but just make sure that that particular brand of stupidity is one that you're interested in. If it is, this game can provide big laughs, funny moments, and plenty of schlong crushing. And if it isn't, in a way, it might provide even more schlong crushing than the former option, and you should run as far away as you can. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful in determining if Kabula is right for you. Ask your doctor. If you did find it helpful, consider liking, subscribing, sending me $1 million in unmarked bills. I would appreciate all of those an equal amount. Anyway, until next time, my name's Chris George, and I don't have a catchphrase, but I guess, keep it creepy. I tried so hard to make every character I played creepy. That was my whole goal every time, and it never worked out for me. I hope you have better success than I did. See you next time. Bye.